Let us pray. We give thanks to God for the rich heritage of this province as found in our people. We pray that native-born Albertans and those who have come from other places may continue to work together to preserve and enlarge the precious heritage called Alberta. Amen.
Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions. Introduction of bills. Tabling returns and reports.
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to table with the House copies of the communiques from the Western Premiers Conference, which concluded yesterday afternoon in Camrose, to tell the honourable members that copies will be made available to all of them shortly after the tabling of these copies.
Okay. Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs, followed by the Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to table copies of a white paper on the Financial Consumers Act for the interests of all honourable members.
Deputy Premier.
Speaker, I'm filing with the Assembly copies of the Western Trade Objectives, report of the Western Ministers responsible for multilateral trade negotiations, which was approved by the Western Premiers Conference yesterday.
Member for Calgary-Glenmore. Calgary-Glenmore, followed by the Minister of Labour.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to table the annual report 1988-89, Alberta Health and Social Services Disciplines Committee.
Okay. Honourable Minister of Labour.
Mr. Speaker, I filed a reply to motion number 190, which was spoken to in this House on June 28, 1988.
That's good.
Introduction of special guests.
Quick question period.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Mr. Speaker, to the Premier. Mr. Speaker, it's obvious to almost everybody that the Meech Lake Accord is in serious jeopardy. Mr. Speaker, I think it's clear that there's going to have to be compromise from all the First Ministers right across the country if some constitutional accord is going to be salvaged, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, it's my understanding the leaders of the three other Western provinces all expressed a willingness to at least consider change. The Premier, however, seemed to remain rigid in his position. My question to the Premier, will the Premier explain why he remains so unwilling to change the accord, even when the other Western Premiers are admitting that there will be a need for change to allow the accord to pass? In other words, why is he so out of touch in this matter?
Well, Mr. Speaker, surprised by the honourable member's question. I only draw to his attention that he and his caucus unanimously endorsed the accord. And for him to now say you're out of touch to support it is a strange position for him to be taking, and a puzzling one. I should make it clear, Mr. Speaker, that the premiers who have had this accord go through their legislatures are not talking about changing the accord. They feel the accord has been approved by their legislatures as well.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Premier will be aware that we supported it at the end because they turned down all our amendments, Mr. Speaker. We thought would have made a better accord at the time. Right. My question to the Premier, in view of the circumstances, well, at least we were there to vote. Mr. Speaker, my question is, in view of the circumstances now, And the point that I want to make, unless there's compromise by Mr. Mulrooney, Mr. Barassa, and other First Ministers, we're not going to get some of the good aspects of the Constitutional Court. And that's my question, is why was the Premier not prepared? As he did earlier on, said he might look at a Meech Lake 2 or a parallel accord. Why is he not prepared to look at this now?
Mr. Speaker, the report from the Premier of Manitoba yesterday was this. Their province has been holding public hearings of an all-party committee. The report from that committee will not be available until sometime in early fall. At that time, the Premier of Manitoba will be meeting with the other First Ministers and making a report on the position of his government. Essentially the same type of process is being undertaken in New Brunswick. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as the Premier's correctly noted, leaving the conference yesterday, that they received a report from the Premier of Manitoba on his hearings and are looking forward to discussing it further at a First Minister's conference. That's the position of the government of Alberta, Mr. Speaker. Our House has passed the accord. It has always been my belief that shortly after the passing of the accord, we immediately go into constitutional reform, Senate reform, which we have made the #1 constitutional reform issue.
Well, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, it seems clear that this sort of all-or-nothing position on Meech Lake is increasingly going to lead us to nothing. No constitutional court, no Senate reform, anything else. Has the Premier really considered that? And if he has, why then would he not be prepared to open up the process and perhaps we can even get a better accord out of it?
I appreciate the honourable member's position, and I appreciate him wanting to see constitutional reform, and I think he has expressed that before in the House, and I think it's correct. Mr. Speaker, the government, of course, has not shut its mind to second stage constitutional reform, obviously. There is no parallel accord, as some talk about, before anybody for consideration. We have the Meech Lake Accord. It has within it a comprehensive package of constitutional reform passed unanimously by our legislature. The government feels that that is the way we should deal with this constitutional reform and get on to Senate reform, which is such an important feature for this province, and as I congratulate the honourable member for this whole legislature.
Second main question, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to direct my second question to the Minister of Family and Social Services to continue our discussion about poverty in the province, Mr. Speaker. This government likes to talk about the unemployment rate as if it is at an acceptable level. We find it unacceptable. But, Mr. Speaker, when this Premier took office in 1985, the 10.1% rate represented 125,000 Albertans out of work. The most recent figure of 6.7% represents 87,000 who are unemployed. Mr. Speaker, the government would like us to believe that they've created 38,000 new jobs. But if we look at the same period of time, we notice the number of single people in social allowance went up 14,000, Mr. Speaker. 14,000 more Albertans who are living on an income that is only half of the statistics of Canada's poverty line. My question is to this minister. Why doesn't the government tell the truth, Mr. Speaker, about what is really happening to our economy, that there are growing numbers of people falling into the welfare trap and growing numbers of people falling below the poverty line?
Mr. Speaker, again, this government always tells the truth. And I know that the members opposite don't always like to hear it because the truth is often good news. The facts are this, Mr. Speaker, and he alluded to them himself when he pointed out the considerable progress that we've made at reducing the unemployment rate in this province. He didn't mention, though, that there is a record number of jobs in Alberta today, more jobs in this province today, Mr. Speaker, than we've ever had in the history of this province. To get back to his question as it relates, and again always asks numerous questions, but his question as it relates to the increase in the number of single employables, particularly on social allowance, I would have to say that I share the member's concern, and that one of the priorities of this minister is going to increase the emphasis on job training and opportunities for employment for those on social allowance. I'm looking forward to working with the Minister of Career Development and Employment. I know that she has some new thoughts and some good ideas that she'll be bringing forward in due time as well, and we'll continue to see more jobs for Albertans as a result of this government's initiatives.
Mr. Speaker, how could I anticipate that answer, Mr. Speaker? But is this minister aware, when he talks about the jobs, that 1 out of 2 of those new jobs is in the service sector, where the wage is 20% below the average, and Alberta leads the way in jobs and part-time jobs, Mr. Speaker? That actually adds to poverty rather than takes away, Mr.
Right.
Speaker. Is the minister not aware of that?
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting. If the Leader of the Opposition thought he already had the answer, I don't know why he asked the question. But again, Mr. Speaker, I can only reiterate the emphasis that this government is putting on in diversifying and strengthening the economy. And those initiatives, and we've talked about them on many occasions in this Assembly, the initiatives as they relate to diversification of our economy as it relates to forestry, and we're seeing those initiatives take hold, and we're seeing good jobs created in this province as a result of that. Our initiatives as it relates to tourism, we've watched it grow from a $1 billion industry to over a $2 billion industry, and we recognize that it has the potential to be a $10 billion industry in this province someday as a result of our initiatives. Our initiatives as it relates to TRT. Mr. Speaker, clearly this government has a vision. This government sees a province that's going to be able to provide jobs for Albertans. We've done it in the past, and we're going to continue to do that, and you're going to continue to see the unemployment rate drop.
What a vision. More people on welfare, more low-paying jobs, and more part-time jobs. What a vision, Mr. Speaker.
Really.
Mr. Speaker, his federal cousins now have also cut back in UI benefits. That's going to put another 20,000 people cut off that. Has direct implications for more people going on welfare. What contingency plans does this minister have to deal with those thousands of people that are also going to be in welfare?
Let's hear it. Well, again, Mr. Speaker, I want to first of all take this opportunity to review for the member opposite the commitment that this government has, first of all, to those individuals that are unfortunate enough to find themselves on social allowance. We will continue to make sure that their needs are met as it relates to food, shelter, clothing, medical, dental, optometrical. Now, it's always difficult, Mr. Speaker, to respond with just one answer when they ask 2 questions. As it relates to UIC, yes, I've assessed the impact that potentially might have on our government, and particularly on my budget. But I would say again, Mr. Speaker, that we're very fortunate in Alberta compared to other provinces where it could have a very significant impact. But in Alberta, where again we've alluded to the 40,000 new jobs last year, but 25,000 new jobs this year. And we're fortunate that our economy is growing, expanding, we're getting new jobs, and so the impact won't be nearly as great.
Thank you. Supplementary information, briefly.
Twice by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. He has in his possession information that indicates that part-time work was reduced by 5,000 positions last month.
Right? Because that...
I don't think so. That's going to... No. That's...
not true.
Thank you. Member for Edmonton Glengarry, Leader of the Liberals.
Mr. Speaker, maybe I could congratulate at the outset the honourable member from Norwood in showing a change, a shift in gears on the Meech Lake matter. I'm delighted to see that happen, because it was only a few days ago, yesterday, I think, that he indicated that very few people cared about Meech Lake. Mr. Speaker, the polls, Mr. Speaker, you couldn't answer it, Ray. Mr. Speaker, we now have polls that show that the majority of Western Canadians, of Albertans, oppose Meech Lake. We now have the Premier of Manitoba showing the great courage and saying, I won't go along with Meech Lake. We have the Premier of BC saying, I'm not comfortable with this definition of distinct society. And we now have the Premier of Saskatchewan saying, well, maybe I will consider another alternative. Mr. Speaker, one of the questions that I'd like to put to the Premier is this. Obviously, his definition of distinct society must be very much different than the definition of Mr. Van der Zalm, of Premier Van der Zalm. I wonder if you could indicate to this Assembly what the differences are beyond just saying that we're protecting culture and language.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, in the honourable member's lead-in to his question, he made several incorrect statements, which is not unusual, but I'd just like to point it out to the House and to Hansard. But let me say, Mr. Speaker, the government of Alberta does not enter into constitutional reform agreements and then wonder what they meant. The government of Alberta took some considerable period of time leading constitutional reform discussions across Canada. The government of Alberta obtained the best possible constitutional advice from the best legal minds in our country and outside of our country, and then worked with the other governments to put together a comprehensive package. We don't then start thinking, what does it mean that we have signed? That may happen in other places. I'm not saying it is, but it may. It's not happening here. As far as the Premier of Manitoba, let's remember that the Premier of Manitoba has an all-party committee out carrying on hearings, so that their position is not yet known. But I should point out, Mr. Speaker, there is a certain twist to the amount of courage that you show on some of these sensitive matters when you're in a minority government.
Mr. Speaker, the courts and time have shown us, and Mr. Van der Zalm has clearly now shown difficulty with that definition. I'd like to go back, and perhaps the Premier didn't understand my question. The issue of the notwithstanding provisions have clearly shown that a minority can be very much jeopardized by using that kind of a provision. Mr. Speaker, minorities, women, Native groups are all in jeopardy with this agreement. Evidence now shows that. The Premier of BC is in difficulty with this matter. Just give us your definition, sir, of what distinct society means. Just that simple request.
Your definition.
Again, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is incorrect in the lead-in to his supplementary question. There is not evidence of threats to women's, minority interests. Also, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member talks about the notwithstanding clause. It has nothing to do with Meech Lake. It is in the constitutional reform package of 1982. It is not in Meech Lake. And as I said on a previous occasion in the House, the honourable member not to take such a shallow look at a package of constitutional reform. Now, the distinct society clause, Mr. Speaker, was one that took a great deal of time and discussion in developing the Meech Lake package. The Alberta government's position is this. When you deal with Quebec, when you travel in Quebec, you know that it is different in a way from other parts of Canada. For one simple fact is that most of the French people, French francophones in Canada, live in Quebec. And most of the English people in Canada live outside of Quebec. But there is a different or distinct flavor to the province of Quebec. When we are prepared to say that in this constitutional package, we are recognizing a fact of life. We are recognizing a fact of life. However, the constitutional advice, and as I said earlier, the best possible constitutional advice that was placed not just before the government of Alberta, but during the Meech Lake and the Langevin Block considerations were, and it is why the premiers signed that agreement, that the distinct society clause, neither now nor in the future, will confer onto people in Quebec or the province of Quebec any powers or status that they do not currently have, nor will it derogate from any powers or rights of any Canadians. It is a clause recognizing the different nature of that province only, and does not take powers away from any Canadians or give any additional powers to Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, it seems to me that there is a positive that has developed in Camrose, and that is that another opportunity has opened up for the Premier. Would the Premier take his ministers and take his experts and say to them, let's just look at the other alternatives. Let's look at this parallel tack or this tandem tack that the other premiers are talking about. Why not just do that to see if there is an opportunity, Mr. Premier?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the premiers who were not in office when the constitutional accord was signed are now in Manitoba, and the Premier of New Brunswick are now carrying out legislative responsibilities of their governments. They will then be joining the other First Ministers. It may well be that something will come out of their hearings that the First Ministers will want to look at or consider. But frankly, Mr. Speaker, we haven't seen any of those. What we have is negotiated the best possible package that we could negotiate. And might I say, Mr. Speaker, one of the features of the Meech Lake Accord, passed unanimously here, is the equality of provinces. The equality of provinces is in that accord. The preamble to the accord states that provinces are equal. The Alberta government fought for that statement because we recognize that we will soon be in Senate reform discussions, and we know how important we feel the equal feature as well as the effective and elected feature of Senate reform.
Calgary, Fish Creek, followed by Vegreville, Calgary, Buffalo, and Athabasca, Lac-La-Biche.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to direct to the Premier a question regarding communique number 2, issued by the Western Premiers at the conclusion of their conference this week in Camrose. In this communique, Mr. Speaker, dealing with the environment, the Western Premiers emphasized that the Western provinces must continue to exercise what they called primary control over environmental decision-making, and furthermore called on the federal government to respect provincial jurisdiction in environmental assessment procedures. Mr. Speaker, could the Premier clarify for the Assembly today whether the Western Premiers made any attempt to compare their respective assessment standards with federal standards in staking out their jurisdictional position?
Mr. Speaker, first, yes, there was a considerable discussion along those lines. And it is one of the reasons why the province of Alberta was able to convince the other premiers to move in a unanimous way to support the position we've been taking here in the legislature and with the federal government. And that is that we all agree, and I know it's true of other parties, I know it's true of the federal government and the other provinces, we all agree on how important it is that we protect the environment. There's no question about that, and we're going to always work together to make sure that happens. But we want to make sure also, Mr. Speaker, that the way our forefathers and the fathers of Confederation developed this country, in which we have provinces with responsibilities and the federal government with certain responsibilities, that those responsibilities are not eroded. And therefore, the jurisdiction provided in the Constitution must be upheld, and we must stand up for Alberta's rights in this regard. Now, particularly coming home to the honourable member's question, the province of Alberta has always, through their standards, their controls, and their legislation, far exceeded the standards of the federal government. And in our environmental impact assessment process, while we are looking if there are ways to improve it, we will. But we have always had the most effective environmental impact assessment process as well. Therefore, the other provinces, in discussing that, felt very strongly that provincial governments should maintain and must always fight for their jurisdiction in these areas. And when there is shared responsibilities, work in a cooperative, coordinated way with the federal government to remove duplication or confusion about how approvals are granted. Because I come back to my first comment, we all recognize, and I know it's true of every party and government, the importance of the environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Staying with the Western Premiers Conference, communique number 6, entitled Strengthening the Family, frankly, I was personally heartened by it, Mr. Speaker, particularly their unanimous commitment to the family and to community-based volunteer organizations. However, could the Premier elaborate on the implications of the communique's reference, Mr. Speaker, to the need for a more flexible daycare system? What sorts of flexibility, Mr. Speaker, were contemplated in their reference to this need?
Mr. Speaker, the Premiers noted the changing face of society and the fact that daycare must be provided in a way to reflect those changes and to reflect the makeup of families and all the diverse forms that families take these days. And realize that in order to provide effective, efficient, and good daycare, that we should be able to have it provided in a variety of ways, such as cooperatives, such as non-profit, or for-profit, or private, or daycares provided in the workplace. But that while we are working to have the flexibility to have all of those areas provide daycare, that we do not do anything. We make sure our programs have the flexibility that we don't tilt to any one particular form of providing daycare, because we think all of these supplies of the spaces can provide it in an effective way, and each one has its own attractiveness to parents.
With your forbearance, Mr. Speaker, I would like to shift to another communique, but arising from the same important and historic conference, and that has to do with communique number 10, which dealt in part with Senate reform, reference to which has been made earlier in the question period today. In light of the positive language used by the Western Premiers in their reference to our Bill 11, the Senatorial Selection Act, was the Premier given any indication by the other Western Premiers as to how prepared they are to emulate Alberta's innovative example?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is true. We had a very good discussion on Senate reform, and I was pleased that the Western Premiers reaffirmed their support, Mr. Speaker, to the EEE Senate model, which Alberta and this legislature supports so strongly. And I did discuss with the Premiers our Bill 11, which had been tabled, and I felt free to discuss with them the contents of the bill. But I must say, while they looked on it as a unique, interesting, and a process which would keep momentum going towards reform of the Senate, I could not bring them to a commitment that they would follow the lead of Alberta on a particular election of a senator at this time before Senate reform discussions commenced. But as I will say, there was a great deal of interest, both expressed by the premiers and from their discussions they've had with the public back in their own provinces.
Vegreville, followed by Calgary-Buffalo.
A point of order, Mr. Speaker, on that last.
Mr. Speaker, this government likes to brag and beat their chests about their efforts to create economic diversification and job creation in the province. Last year, in March, they advanced a $55 million loan guarantee and a $12 million loan to one Mr. Peter Pocklington. While they were bragging about this initiative, they made the claim that the projects are expected to create approximately 400 direct jobs and 1,200 indirect employment opportunities within the province. And I'm wondering if the Minister of Agriculture can tell us, in light of his recent conversations with Mr. Pocklington, just how many jobs have been created in exchange for the $6 million of taxpayers' money that Mr. Pocklington's received so far.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure that with the introduction that the honourable member used that he's directing the question in the right direction. I would say, though, that I'm not prepared to share with the House any discussions that I've had with any processors in the province, and I think at this point in time I've met with almost all of them.
With respect, it's these secret deals that got the government into trouble in the first place, and we're trying to give the minister an opportunity to come clean.
Right. That's right.
The Minister of Economic Development said that the agreement with Gainers is a very rigid agreement, this is last year in the Assembly, that involves an undertaking by Gainers to build a new hog processing plant in southern Alberta and to expand and upgrade the beef processing plant in northern Alberta. What evidence does this minister have that any of those objectives have even been started on to this date in exchange for $6 million?
Mr. Speaker, the only involvement of this ministry in the projects that are under discussion is through the Canada-Alberta Agricultural Processing and Marketing Agreement, which is an agreement that triggers in once the project is completed and operational. At this point in time, Alberta Agriculture has had no direct involvement with the plants the man is talking about.
Well, for the Minister of Agriculture to suggest he's not interested in the creation of further processing jobs, pork processing, that's ludicrous. I'd like to ask the Minister, does he have any evidence on paper to show the pork producers in northern Alberta that if the plant is built in southern Alberta, that it won't result in the closure of kill capacity and the loss of jobs in the Edmonton Gainers plant?
There you go. Mr. Speaker, first of all, as Minister of Agriculture, I do have a significant interest in the development of processing jobs in our red meat sector. And that is why we have the program in place that I indicated that many companies have used in expanding and bringing about new facilities. As the member for Vegreville very well knows, the kill capacity in the province at the moment for hogs is sufficient to handle the hogs. There is a lack of processing capacity. What will happen with respect to the rationalization of that industry over future years depends a lot on the players in the private sector and where they decide to locate plants to respond to the agricultural production.
Calgary, Buffalo, followed by Athabasca, Laklabish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Premier, the code report is expected to be released soon, and the Ombudsman's report will follow shortly. Now, Mr. Speaker, the 11,000 principal group note holders have been shabbily ignored by this government, which allowed the principal note holders to be sold promissory notes until July 17, 1987, 3 weeks after FIC and AIC went out of business. Well, the Premier has promised to reimburse FIC, AIC depositors if the government is found to be guilty of wrongdoing, but has made no promise to note holders, regardless of what the Ombudsman may find. And I'm wondering whether the Premier can tell us, since the government asked the Ombudsman to investigate this, why he won't extend the same type of undertaking to note holders based on the decision of the Ombudsman.
Mr. Speaker, I think all members of the Assembly are aware that under the current schedule outlined by the court for Mr. Code to report, that we would see that report sometime in the first week or so of July. And as we have said repeatedly, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that Mr. Code will give direction to the court, and the court will give direction to us as to how to respond, including not just the contract companies, which are at the heart of the report, but in fact the principal group limited note holders are referred to by the member of Buffalo. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it would be preempting the role of the court and preempting the report of Mr. Code for us to comment as to how we expect to dispose of our responsibilities outside of what we've already committed to.
Well, the Premier was certainly able to make an undertaking with respect to the AIC depositors without considering that to preempt the role of the court. And I'm wondering whether or not the Premier would be saying through his mouthpiece, Harry Houdini, that in no circumstances will he reimburse the note holders, or does he in fact have an open mind depending on the Ombudsman's findings? Now, note holders want to know that, and they deserve to know that, Mr. Speaker.
I'm taken back by that. That criticism, Mr. Speaker, hits right on my heart, Mr. Speaker. Remember, I do have the floor, however. Mr. Speaker, I'll ignore those unwise words, I'm sure chosen in haste, Mr. Speaker. And I will simply indicate that the process is one which we've outlined before. I will, of course, restate what it is the government has committed to do. And we have done an awful lot, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that these companies are wound up as soon as possible, that in fact the money due to the contract holders is paid to them as soon as possible. And of course, Mr. Speaker, we have put in place one of the most comprehensive reviews of this problem ever undertaken by a government facing this kind of unfortunate collapse of a financial institution. Mr. Speaker, we have provided every piece of information we have. This process has gone on for over 1 year. Over 159 people have been called. 37,000 pages of witness testimonies before Mr. Code, before the court. Surely, Mr. Speaker, after a long process with all the best experts in the world involved, that we should wait to see what Mr. Code has to say, what the court report has to say, before we preempt or give any suggestion of movement before Mr. Code reports, Mr. Speaker. To do something else would in fact be surely inappropriate and not in the best interests of the court process, Mr. Code, and the effort, and certainly not the contract holders, Mr. Speaker.
Well, it would be interesting to see if this is one of the few times that the Premier and the Provincial Treasurer can agree on something. But I'm wondering whether the Premier might now make an effort at answering whether or not, since the Code report is going to be released shortly, whether he is prepared to support a motion which I will be presenting in this House to suspend the normal business of the House immediately.
Honourable member, your motion is not before the House, and this is not the place to announce that your motion is before the House. Order, please. So the question is out of order. Athabas Galak-Labish. Athabas Galak-Labish. No, you won't. Athabas Galak-Labish. Order, please. Athabas Galak-Labish.
Better still number. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Honourable Premier of Alberta. On Monday, the opposition indicated that the Premier of British Columbia is saying that Alberta government is engaged in a bidding war to attract industries and jobs to Alberta. The same day, the opposition also asked why we are involved in corporate welfare. Well, if we listen to the opposition, the whole province will be on welfare, like too many of my constituents. My question to the Premier is, what assurance can he give this Assembly that he will work and proceed forward with his initiatives in creating jobs and attracting industries to Alberta, so the people don't get caught in a welfare trap like the opposition talks about?
Mr. Speaker, appreciate the fact that the honourable member cares so strongly for those that he represents, and that unfortunately some members of the legislature would make fun of that. Mr. Speaker, it is true that the Premier of British Columbia had received clearly misinformation as to the efforts and the initiatives of the government of Alberta in making sure that we not only rebuild those parts of our economy that we have always counted on, such as energy and agriculture, but that we work very hard to diversify our economy and make sure that we provide the growth and the opportunities for the people of your constituency and constituencies all over Alberta in the future. And so I was pleased to be able to explain to the Premier of Alberta, of British Columbia, the initiatives which we are following. We also asked our ministers of economic development and trade, who meet as a committee, to continue to meet to make sure that other governments will know and be able to compare the various initiatives that governments use in building growth and diversifying their economy. And as a part of that discussion, I made it absolutely clear to the three premiers who attended the meeting with me, the government of Alberta is determined to diversify and to provide opportunities and growth all across this province, and that we consider diversification a commitment of our government. We know others have talked about it, but this government is doing it.
My second question is to the Honourable Minister of Family and Social Services. After 2 weeks of hollering at you across the floor here, I'm happy to see that you are going to coordinate delivery of programs with career development and employment, which are very, very important to my constituency. My question is, when will you commence this delivery?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the coordination of programs between myself and the Minister of Career Development and Employment is something that has progressed since this cabinet has been sworn in. We've had numerous discussions and will continue to work together to solve this problem. Not only these two ministers, but of course all of cabinet and all of this caucus will work together towards solving that problem.
I don't have a final question. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Edmonton-Avonmore, followed by Westlock Sturgeon, Olds Didsbury, Edmonton Highlands, Edmonton Gold Bar, Bow Valley, Edmonton Jasper Place, Calgary McKnight, Lesser Slave Lake, Edmonton Millwoods, Cypress Redcliffe, Banff Cochrane, Edmonton-Avonmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 1980, a Senate committee found that young mothers often have poor knowledge of child development and unrealistic expectations of their child, thus increasing the possibility that the child will be at risk because we have children raising children. Here in Alberta, 1 in 2 single-parent families headed by women lives in poverty, a fact which the Premier's rhetoric on supporting families seems to ignore. My question is to the Minister of Family and Social Services. How can teenage mothers trust this government to meet their complex needs when the Minister has withdrawn funding for Parkwood House, the only residential service for unwed mothers in Calgary?
Mr. Speaker, I have addressed that question in this Assembly on a previous occasion. I'd want to say a couple of things, Mr. Speaker. I have had numerous meetings with the Salvation Army, who have worked very cooperatively with this government in providing some excellent services in the city of Calgary and indeed throughout the province of Alberta. As it relates to Parkwood House specifically, Mr. Speaker, this minister has cut no funding to Parkwood House. The Salvation Army made a decision that the facility itself perhaps was being somewhat underutilized. It's a 35-bed facility. At the time they made the decision to close that particular facility. I think that 20 of the beds were operated. Since then, I think it's down to about 3. And I would say that we've worked very closely with the Salvation Army in making sure that the needs of of the clients in that particular facility are being met on an ongoing basis. But I would also want to say that this minister has been very supportive of the good work that the Salvation Army is doing in Calgary, that I have personally discussed this particular situation with Major Jolly, and we both, I think, came to the conclusion that perhaps a facility as large as Parkwood House wasn't appropriate. They have found a better use for it. But I assured Major Jolly that I would be interested in working with her in finding a more appropriate size facility, and we're continuing towards that goal.
Mr. Speaker, 25 to 40 residential beds are needed in Calgary, and the service providers in Calgary say that the safety net is full of holes. Therefore, will the minister now agree to fund Parkwood House on an interim basis and to fund a needs assessment in the Calgary region?
Well, number of questions again, Mr. Speaker, but I just indicated.
Thank you. There were two questions in one. Perhaps the minister would deal with the first one. Thank you.
They're busy chortling away, Mr. Speaker, and they don't like to hear the answers. But again, Mr. Speaker, we are concerned about making sure those essential services are being met. There are a number of programs in place in Calgary that are working very efficiently. Calgary Integrated Services with their Calgary Life Improvement Program. We're still working with the Catholic Families Service Bureau. We're still working with the Joint Integrated Measures for Youth. A number of good programs that are meeting those needs, Mr. Speaker. We'll continue to meet those needs. We've done it in the past, and we will in the future.
Mr. Speaker, we hear of long waiting lists for counseling services and support services. In addition, Alberta has a high rate of teen pregnancy, and we see the government backing away from their commitment to these women and their children. Will the government now, and this minister now, reorder his misplaced priorities by allocating specific department resources to coordinating existing services and to providing preventive programs? Now.
Mr. Speaker, we're doing just that. This government has a number of excellent programs. I highlighted just a few of them a few moments ago to the member opposite. I don't know where she gets her statistics from, but they're not accurate. They're not accurate. This government and this department is going to continue to provide those essential services that are needed in the city of Calgary and indeed throughout the province of Alberta, Mr. Speaker.
Time for question period has expired. One point of order, Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My point of order relates to questions asked by the honourable member for Calgary Fish Creek and to a lesser extent Lac La Biche, Athabasca Lac La Biche, and relates to the question of supplementary questions, Mr. Speaker. In my respectful submission, what has been happening now is illustrated in those cases. Three separate questions are being asked. In the first instance, there was a question relating to environmental impact assessments, and these were followed by two completely separate topics. They're strung together only by the fact that they were discussed allegedly at the same conference. And about this, Beauchesne 414 makes the common sense observation as follows: although there may be no debate on an answer, further questions as may be necessary for the elucidation of the answers that have been given within due limits may be addressed to the minister. So it's obviously one question followed by two supplementaries elucidating what has gone before, and not three separate questions, as is becoming to be among some honourable members the habit, in my respectful submission, Mr. Speaker.
The citation goes on to say in 414, the extent to which supplementary questions may be asked is in the discretion of the Speaker. Thank you. And the thin golden thread that held the three questions together by the member for Calgary Fish Creek was the fact that he was dealing with communiques, and the chair felt some discomfort at the way the matter was being addressed, but nevertheless it was dealing with communiques as issued by the conference. At the same time, the chair also noted that for a change the House was being especially attentive to the answers, and so was at somewhat of a loss as to whether to interject at that stage. Also aware that the answers by the Honourable Premier were lengthier than usual, and again this seemed to flow from the importance of the conference that had taken place. However, the chair will still take guidance from the concerns as raised by the member for Edmonton Strathcona, and hopefully all members of the House will pay attention as well. Thank you.